All right. Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have folks here, and welcome to our webinar, Unintended Consequences, How Scaling Back Public Pensions Puts Government Revenues at Risk. My name is Matt Eckel. I'm the Associate Director of Research for NCPERS, and I'm delighted to have everyone join us today for what I know will be a great discussion. Public pensions are often misunderstood as a drain on taxpayer resources, but new research from NCPERS reveals a very different story. Every dollar that taxpayers contribute to state and local pensions generates over $13 in economic activity, and this economic impact isn't abstract. It translates into more local jobs, more consumer spending, and is ultimately a net positive for state and local tax revenues by and large. This means that scaling back public pensions, far from being fiscally prudent or however it is that is presented, is actually economically self-defeating and fiscally counterproductive. And today we're here to explore these findings in depth. You'll hear from Dr. Michael Kahn, NCPERS Director of Research, who will share the latest conclusions and insights from our new report, explaining exactly how pensions support local economies and sustain healthy public revenues. Dr. Kahn serves as Director of Research for NCPERS. He brings over 30 years of research experience in public pensions and state and local tax and economic policies. Following his retirement from the National Education Association, he founded the Institute on Public Pension Solutions. And starting in 2014, he developed with NCPERS a recurring public pension funding forum, the latest iteration of which is coming up in August in Chicago. And we hope you all will keep an eye out for that. Michael previously served as a trustee of EBRI and was a member of the Public Employee Committee of IFEBP. He holds three master's degrees and a PhD from the universities of Hawaii, North Carolina, and Catholic University of America, with graduate training in economics, geography, and sociology. And we're delighted to have him here with us today to chat. And in addition, we have Keith Brainerd, who serves as research director for the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, where he leads analysis and reporting on public retirement system administration and policy. He has co-authored the Government Plans Answer book and created the Public Fund Survey, which evolved into the widely used Public Plans database. A recognized expert in public pension policy, Keith has testified before Congress and state legislative committees and frequently appears in media discussions on retirement issues, including this one. He's an adjunct assistant professor at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin and serves as vice chairman of the Texas Pension Review Board. Keith previously held budget and planning roles with the Arizona State Retirement System and worked as a fiscal analyst for both the Texas and Arizona legislatures. We hope you'll leave this session with a clearer understanding of how public pension systems work, why they matter so deeply to local economies, and why supporting them is in everyone's interests. Throughout this discussion, please use the chat function to implement questions for speakers, and I will make sure that those get to our speakers at the end of the discussion. We will try our best to answer questions throughout the webinar, and we'll hold an audience Q&A for the last 10 minutes or so. So without further ado, let's get started. Michael, you have the digital floor.
Uh, Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone who took the time today to join us. Listening to Matt about myself, it seems like I have been a student whole my life, studying one thing after the other, and I'm still studying pensions, really, and trying to understand how important they are. Uh, of course, you are on the front lines, really addressing the issues and trying to protect and preserve public pensions. We as researchers try our best at NCPERS to develop data and information that you can use in your efforts to address the challenges public pensions face. Before I begin, I want to put today's presentation in context. Uh, just looking at it from maybe 30,000 feet above, there are really three lines of attacks on public pensions from opponents of public pensions. One is unfunded liabilities are too high, taxpayers can't afford public pensions. The second one is public pensions are taking away money from important public services such as education and public safety, etc. And number three, public pensions are fiscally unsustainable. So our research really revolves around all of these three issues. We have done research on each of them and using public data and done studies on each of them and found no evidence of what's claimed in these attacks on public pensions. So let me turn now to the today's research. Today our focus is mainly about the argument from opponents that taxpayers can't afford public pensions. And our analysis shows that actually taxpayers cannot afford not to have public pension, because if there were no public pension, they'll actually have to pay more to make up the money needed to provide crucial public services such as public safety, etc. We also found that the positive economic and revenue impact of public pension has become more pronounced over time. Uh, so, we have done this study three times now during the last 1 decade. And each time we find the impact, economic and revenue impact has become a little bit more than before. So over the last decade or so, we looked at the data and have done three studies so far. So this sort of pronouncement or increasing impact of pensions on economy and revenues, you all must be doing something really right, and I like to know what it is that you do, how you invest, that the return to the economy is so pronounced and getting better each time we do the study. So with that, I'll begin today's presentation, and Matt is going to pull up. Maybe go into, there we go. So our study, this is the actual, the next slide, please. This is the actual study. This is, I think it's already published, Matt. Is it already out or is it coming in the next few days?
I
I've been.
believe it is live on the website as of today.
Okay, great. So if anybody wants a copy, you can look at our website. Also, other studies that I mentioned in the three areas where we face attacks on public pensions, those studies are also on our website. So in your efforts, hopefully these are our contribution to assist you in what you do. Such a good job in investing as well as defending and uh, preserving and enhancing public education. Next, please. So over the last 2 decades, policymakers have scaled back public pensions, especially after the Great Recession, uh, by cutting benefits, increasing contributions, especially employee contributions and employer contributions, and closing pension plans, especially for new hires. So these have been some of the actions that have been taken over the past two or more than 2 decades now. Next. So without realizing that scaling back public pensions will undermine state and local economies and in turn revenue system, as the economy and revenues are very closely correlated. Next, please. So we have done analysis of the latest publicly available data to measure the impact of public pensions on state and local economies and revenues in 2018, 2020, and now in 2025. Next. And our analysis consistently show that if there were no public pensions, state and local economies and revenues will suffer, and taxpayers will end up paying more in taxes to receive the prevailing level of public services. Somebody has to make up that amount that is net gain from public pensions, existence of public pensions. We also find that the economic and revenue impact of public pension has become more pronounced over the last decade, and that's why I was saying I don't know what you do, that it's getting better and better. Next, please. So how do public pensions impact economy and revenues? Uh, so when retirees spend their pension checks, it grows local economies. Similarly, when pension funds invest their assets, it grows the economy as well. So although pension funds invest globally, their economic impact can be traced to individual states, and I'll explain that in a minute. And when the economy grows, revenues grow. Next, please. And there are several studies that regularly assess impact of retiree spending on economy and revenues. One of them is a well-known study by our sister organization. It's called Pensionomics, and they have been doing this for a while. So latest one is available now, 2025 study. And individual states have also done various studies. And as an example, I put here Texas, a teacher retirement system of Texas, that they had released this in October 31st, 2024, that the economic impact of the TRS is about $48.8 billion, and that's mainly based on the payments, the pensions that have been paid by the teacher retirement system. And Keith would probably talk about more studies like this later on. Next, please. However, I personally don't know any study. There are some studies in Europe, but not in the US, that look at the economic and revenue impact of investment of public pension fund assets. So, yes. So we have, since there was no existing literature or mechanism to assess that I know of, so we developed our own econometric model from scratch. And for the lack of any other name, I thought we just call it NCPERS model to estimate an economic impact of investments of assets. So, but what this model look like? So here we have put pension assets, investment of those assets in a model, along with everything else important in economic growth. For example, education has a great economic impact. Higher education, K through 12, investment in infrastructure has great economic impact. Productivity has great economic. All those things really do matter in economic growth. So we included all of those variables to look at the net effect of pension assets. Given that everything else also impacts economy, then what's in the whole mix of these things? what's the net impact of pension investment of pension assets. And in this model, there was the beta value was 2.36 for pension investment of pension assets, which means since all the variables dollars are measured in thousands of dollars, which means that each $1,000 invested by pension fund returns grows the economy by about $2,360. And economy we measure with personal income because personal income is the main source of revenue also, rather than the GDP and other measures because they are hard to relate to the tax revenue at state and local level because some of the production of the uh, materials, the ownership may be in another state or in another country. So that becomes harder to assess. So we just focus on the personal income rather than the GDP. Next, please. So we looked at the asset side. So how do we estimate economic tax revenue impact of investment of pension assets? Further going down the same list. So this is the methodology. I mean, you can look more in detail in the publication, but basically we estimate economic impact by multiplying assets of state and local pension plans by the beta value that I mentioned, 2.36 from our the model that I had mentioned before. And then since investments are made globally, we then adjust the number by the ratio of state economy to the national economies. And then we then adjust this economic impact by a multiplier effect of 2.5. I know there's a question about this and I'll address. There is, not everybody believes, not all economists agree and there are reasons behind why they don't agree on the uh, the multiplier effects. We'll talk about that. Once the economic impact is determined, we estimate the tax revenue impact by multiplying the economic impact by the state revenue quotient. This is another new measure that we have developed based on about 46 years of data by running a model of uh, personal income growth and the revenue growth together. And you can come pretty closely estimate how much the revenue would be. Next, please. So how do we estimate economic and tax revenue impact of spending of pension checks, which many states have done, as I mentioned, the study Pensionomics does that. Various states have done that. Colorado, Parrot, they do a study. Texas, various other states, which Keith would probably mention some of them. So we measure economic impact of spending of pension checks by multiplying with the multiplier effect. And once the impact is known, we multiply with the state tax revenue quotient that I mentioned we have developed by looking at the 46 years of data for each state to come up with that quotient. Next, please. So our analysis showed that public pensions in 2023 added about 2.9 trillion to US economy. Next. Almost the same as projected in our 2017 study, where we were looking at if there were no public pensions, the US economy will suffer a loss of about $3 trillion. So this projection was done in 2017, and the publication known as Economic Loss. So suppose if there were no public pension, that would be the loss to the U.S. economy. But now that we have public pensions, we estimate almost about 3 trillion in 2023. That's the latest data available. So it's pretty close, pretty much on, on the target. But the two different ways of estimating, uh, one looking at what will be the loss by 2025, and the other looking at what will be the gain to the economy. Next, please. So just to summarize the impact, economic and revenue impact of both investment and pension benefit spending in 2023. Economic impact of investment of assets was 1.92 trillion, and of spending of pension checks was 980 billion, so total is about 2.9 trillion. Then we translate this into a revenue impact, investment of assets, 453 billion attributable to investment of assets, and 209 billion attributable to spending of pension checks. So total about 662 billion impact. Next, please. So public pensions in 2023 generated more tax revenue for state and local governments than taxpayer contributions. So we say taxpayers' total tax revenue attributable to pensions was about 662 billion, and total taxpayer contribution to public pensions in the same year, 2023, was 217 billion. So net revenue attributable to public pension is 445 equals 662 minus 217. So it's 445 billion is the net revenue attributable to public pension. If there are no public pensions, taxpayers will have to pay 445 billion more in taxes to receive the prevailing level of public services that they now receive. Next, please. So our study estimates net tax revenue impact of public pension for each of the 50 states. So we have not done that only nationally, but we have done this for each of your states. Alabama, for example, state and local revenue attributable to investment of pension fund assets, 600 million. All numbers are in thousands of dollars. And pension spending of pension checks, about 2 billion, total 2.6 billion, taxpayer contribution 1.7 billion. So there's $914 million attributable to public pensions in Alabama. But look at Connecticut. There we have the number is red. And the reason I know, because I've been talking with Connecticut people, and they have been making more contribution than is required by actuarial, actuarially determined contributions. They have been paying more than what they are required to pay. So that's why those numbers are a little bit higher than so they are not net revenue positive, but all other states, and we'll see how many states are net revenue positive. Similarly, there are other states like Indiana, they have been paying more. So which is a I think they've been paying down their unfunded liabilities, and that's becoming a trend. Actually, we'll have a panel of state pension executives from 5 states talk about what they have been doing, how they have improved their funding status by paying down the unfunded liabilities, like Connecticut and others I mentioned. So if you are interested, we love to have you at our pension funding forum. uh, with the unintended consequences study now, repeated 3 times using 2016 data in 2018 and in 2018 data in 2020 update and 2023 data in this current 2025 edition. So we can look at some trends over time in the next couple of slides. And I'm almost done, but just wanted to share this trend information. And it's very interesting that you can see that the chart on the left-hand side, 2016, uh, the economic impact, this is just the economic impact, used to be higher than the impact of investment of assets, which is a blue, sort of blue bar in 2016. But in 2018, the investment of assets bar is a little bit bigger than the pension spending of pension checks, their economic impact on the economy. And the last one, in 2023, you can see there is a tremendous impact from the investments side compared to the spending of pension benefits. So that trend is sort of intriguing for me to what are you all doing in terms of investment that its economic impact is tremendous, growing over the last 10 years, 9 years. Next, we look at the revenue, same picture, revenue, since the economic impact is greater, so the revenue impact is also greater. So there's no magic uh, here. Next, please. So number of states net revenue positive. As I said, each year the number of states net revenue positive actually increased. In 2016, we had 38 states. In 2018, we had 40 states. And in 2023, we had 43 states net revenue positive. When you take out the net revenue attributable to public pensions minus the taxpayer contribution or employer contribution. So only 7 states in this latest analysis were not net positive. And as I mentioned, most of them are those who are paying more than what they are required to pay down their uh, liabilities. Next, please. And economic return on each dollar. So what's the economic impact divided by the taxpayer contribution, employer contributions? So in 2016, it was about $9.59. In 2018, it was $10.55. And this latest analysis is about $13.41. So that's a tremendous growing impact. As I said, the impact has become pronounced over this last decade or so. Next, please. So to conclude, the findings of our study underscores the broader value of public pension. They serve not only as a source of retirement security for teachers, first responders, and other public servants, but also as a driver of local economic activity and government revenues. As policymakers consider the future of retirement systems, a full accounting of these contributions really is essential. Keep all of these things in mind before you make any negative changes to your plan, such as cutting benefits or closing your plan to new hires and things like that. So if nothing else, next please. Oh, thank you. All right. So if nothing else, that was the main point, I think, of our report. Thank you. And now I would turn it over back to Matt, Keith, actually. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Keith, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Matthew. And thanks, Michael. I want to thank you and NCPERS both for the opportunity to share my observations of this study and also for adding to the body of literature pertaining to the economic effects of public pensions. I've got 10 or 15 minutes of prepared remarks, and then I think we'll go to questions. The issue of economic effects of public pensions has been an interesting development in the public pension community over the last 20 years. Public pensions have been around for at least 80 years in most states and more than a century in others. But as far as I know, the idea of recognizing that public pension benefits might provide some ancillary economic benefits beyond the direct benefits to the employee and the employer is a relatively new thing. The original idea of a public pension was a financial relationship between an employer and an employee. The employee provides services to the employer for a certain period of time and in exchange receives a benefit, which we call a pension, in their retirement. That pension benefit has proven to be a quite satisfactory financial arrangement between public employers, states, counties, cities, and so on, and their employees. At its core, a pension is a simple concept: financial compensation in retirement based on the employee's length of service and salary. Employers and employees contribute to the cost of the benefit during employees' working years. The employer invests those contributions and they multiply. That increase through investment is a vital part of the arrangement, as Michael alluded to, as it creates assets that reduce the cost of the benefit. When managed properly, it's a virtuous cycle for everyone: employers, employees, and the general public. So in recent years, these many studies examining the economic effects of public pensions have focused on the macroeconomic impact, the effect on the overall economy, income levels, the economic multiplier, ancillary tax revenues, and other factors that permeate the economy and reach everyone directly or indirectly. But we should remember that first and foremost, a pension benefit is a microeconomic, not macroeconomic occurrence. A pension benefit is part of an economic relationship between an employer and an employee. When we think of the economic impact of public pensions, we think about their macroeconomic effects, as Michael's study does. A large and growing body of literature has found that those macroeconomic benefits are substantial. But the study of economics takes many forms, including microeconomics and a related area known as labor economics. Labor economics looks at the suppliers of labor, workers, and the demanders of labor, employers, and seeks to understand the resulting pattern of wages, employment, and income. In the United States, for nearly all public employees over generations, the pattern of wages and income has included a pension benefit. And I think we all inherently know and understand that most public employees, and certainly those who have stayed on the job for any period of time, have valued their pension benefit as part of their compensation package. Said differently, from a microeconomic standpoint, a pension benefit has been an integral part of the employer-employee relationship in the public sector. So while the numerous studies of the macroeconomics of pension benefits for employees of state and local government are interesting, and they create a compelling macroeconomic case for public pensions, we also should pause to recognize that before there was a macroeconomic impact of public pensions, one that seems to grow larger every year, the most fundamental and indeed the first economic consequences of public pensions took place in the microeconomic realm. Moreover, the fundamental purpose for providing a pension benefit to attract and retain qualified workers is microeconomic. Now on to the macroeconomic angle. I alluded previously to the fact that studies examining economic effects of public pensions are a relatively new thing, dating back 20-25 years. The onset and increased interest in the economic effects of public pensions during this period is no accident. During this same time frame, we have witnessed a pronounced change as public pension plans have evolved financially from an industry focused chiefly on accumulating assets for a growing workforce to one much more focused on distributing benefits to a growing body of retirees. Demographically, public pensions have reached a tipping point. In 2001, there were around 2.5 active working public pension plan participants for every benefit recipient. That ratio has dropped by more than half. So today there is less than 1.2 active working public pension plan participants for every benefit recipient. Some public pension plans already have more benefit recipients than active members. The core factor driving the macroeconomic benefits of public pensions is the distribution of benefits. Public pension benefits are distributed predominantly to those, of course, who are older and retired. The first baby boomers reached age 65 in 2011, and more are reaching retirement age every year. The aging of the public sector workforce has resulted in a significant increase in benefits that are being paid out by public retirement systems. In 2000, public pension funds distributed around $95 billion in benefits. Last year, in 2024, public pensions distributed more than $400 billion, a more than fourfold increase since 2000. This dramatic increase in benefits paid is much of the reason why we are seeing greater interest in the economic benefits of public pensions. When public pensions were collecting and holding on to most of their contributions, the economic impact was muted. But now public pension funds are distributing more than $33 billion every month into every city and town in the United States. That is more than $1 billion a day that is flowing into the U.S. economy from public pension funds. That billion a day is reaching more than 12 million individuals. And what do those 12 million retirees and surviving family members do with that money? They buy groceries. They go to Target and Walmart and Home Depot. They go to local mom and pop businesses to eat, get their hair done, conduct business. They pay their utility bills, buy cars, and they travel. Some pay their rent or mortgage. Very little of this billion a day is being saved. It's continuously dispersed throughout the nation's economy. And one interesting facet of all of this economic activity is the disproportionate effect it has on rural America. Rural America is a vital component of our nation. It's where our energy is produced and our food is grown. Although the portion of the nation's population that lives in rural areas has declined, we still need rural America and we need people living there. And public employees, those who teach schools, respond to car accidents and floods and forest fires, are essential to preserving and sustaining rural America. And a large body of evidence shows that public pensions are essential to sustaining rural America. As Michael mentioned, NCPERS, the National Institute on Retirement Security, has done an excellent work in measuring and describing the economic effects of public pensions. Some of their work is focused on the effects of public pensions on rural America. Likewise, a study commissioned last year by the TRS of Texas that Michael alluded to documents and describes the effect on employment and economic output of TRS pension payments throughout the state, and it specifically focuses on rural areas in Texas. And there are a lot of rural areas in Texas. The TRS study found that in some Texas counties, public pension benefits support more than 5% of all employment and economic activity. The viability of some of these locations surely would be imperiled were it not for public pension plans. And the TRS study focuses only on the benefits distributed by the TRS. The Texas Municipal Retirement System, the Texas County and District Retirement System also distribute hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits annually throughout the state, including in rural areas. And those benefits serve as a vital lifeline to local communities. And that's just Texas. Retirement systems in other states have commissioned economic studies of the effects of public pension benefits and have made similar findings. This is a national phenomenon. And now I'd like to turn to Michael's analysis and observations. When I first saw his paper, whose title, as you saw, begins with Unintended Consequences, I assumed he was referring to the idea that the ancillary economic benefits of public pensions are unintended, which they are. I'm sure that when the idea of a public pension benefit was originally conceived, then replicated throughout the country by every state and many cities and political subdivisions, those employer plan sponsors weren't thinking of the macroeconomic stimulus that a pension benefit would generate. They probably weren't even thinking of the microeconomic effects of a pension. These employers and their employees likely were thinking about a way to enable their hardworking employees to avoid a life of poverty when they were no longer able to work. They might also have been thinking that a pension benefit would be a good way to get older employees out of the workforce. And pensions have been doing a terrific job of those things for many years. As we know, Michael's paper is about the unintended consequences of reductions in pension benefits. And those unintended consequences, according to Michael's paper, are the result of the many benefit reductions that have been approved by states and cities throughout the nation, especially in recent years. And this is where I need to qualify my remarks. I am not an economist. Michael employs some sophisticated economic metrics and formulas in his analysis that I readily admit I do not completely understand. I do, however, believe that public pensions stimulate economic activity and increase economic output and employment. There is too much evidence to not believe this. Public pension plans also aid U.S. and global capital markets by providing a source of long-term patient capital. With assets of some $6 trillion, these funds are invested in diversified portfolios that support businesses and economic growth throughout the nation and the world. Michael says his analysis consistently shows that if there were no public pensions, state and local economies and revenues would suffer, and taxpayers would end up paying more in taxes to receive the prevailing level of public services. I believe this to be true. Michael's study also observes that the economic and revenue impact of public pensions has become more pronounced over the last decade. As I mentioned previously, the amount of benefits public retirement systems are distributing to is growing continuously and now exceeds $400 billion annually. Remember that these benefits are paid not from tax receipts, but from public pension trust funds set up decades ago to collect contributions from workers and taxpayers and ratepayers, and to invest those contributions. A majority of public pension revenues, more than 60% of public pension revenues over the past 30 years, come from investment earnings. This is the power of compound interest, as investment gains beget investment gains in a continuously repeating cycle. This financial model, featuring relatively modest contributions that compound into much greater investment earnings that are distributed throughout the economy, is at the core of the economic engine that public pension funds have become. Skeptics of public pensions will point to the taxpayer contributions that are used to support public pension benefits. And that is a factor that must be part of the calculus of public pension economic effects. Michael's study accounts for taxpayer contributions. We've all witnessed many public pension reforms, especially over the last 15 years. And most of these reforms have actually been benefit reductions. I think we have to acknowledge that some reforms in recent years have been targeted not just to control costs, but also to control risk, to protect plan sponsors and taxpayers against the potential effects of extraordinary investment losses or of a sharp economic downturn. Although Michael's reference to unintended consequences suggests that any reduction in public pension benefits ignores the positive economic impact of public pensions, we have to remember that both economics and public policy are about trade-offs. And policymakers, who are part of the public pension governance process, must weigh multiple factors, including current and future costs, and the risks associated with guaranteeing retirement benefits for employees of state and local government. That said, NASRA annually updates our issue brief that calculates the cost of public pensions in every state as a percentage of everything that state and all of it, each state and all of its political subdivisions, cities, counties, school districts, and so on spend, not including federal money. On a national basis, spending on public pensions by states and political subdivisions is around 5% of all spending. This rate is lower in some states and higher in others. But 5% of all spending to provide not only retirement security for the public sector workforce, but also to generate the economic stimulus that public pensions generate, seems like a fairly modest cost. The overarching message of Michael's study is solid. Policymaking and economics are exercises in trade-offs. When considering public pension policy, including retirement plan design and possible benefit cuts, policymakers would do well to remember that public pensions are not just a liability, they're also a significant economic asset. Matthew, thank you.
Keith, thanks so much for that great kind of coda to this conversation we've been having. Really appreciate it. As we get into Q&A, before we start with questions, there was one comment from one of our participants that I think is just a great kind of segue into what we've been chatting about. I'm contextually assuming that whoever put this is from Alabama. Saying that when I speak with legislators, I inform them that the retirement systems of Alabama pays out $4.2 billion in benefits each year. I also remind them that just under 174,000 of those beneficiaries live in Alabama and spend their dollars there. So I think that's exactly the kind of practical effects we're talking about, and I think we all really appreciate that contribution. So just to get us started, we've got a few great questions in the chat, and I'll direct this first to Michael, but Keith, please do feel free to kind of chime in as appropriate. You mentioned a little bit earlier the multiplier effect, Michael. So the question is, do economists agree on the multiplier effect regarding pension-related spending, which is to say the size of that and the nature of the effect? And if not, what are the arguments on both sides there?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about this a lot. Actually, economists do disagree on even just the use of multiplier effect. And there are two reasons. One is there is no evidence, like when you say there's a multiplier effect of, let's say, 2.5, can you prove that it's 2.5? And the second one is when it's going to happen. Is it going to be 1 year or 2 years? So there have been studies where people look at stimulus packages, for example. During Bush administration, there were two tax cuts known as basically trying to give a stimulus to the economy. We'll cut taxes, people will have more money, and the economy will grow, and they use multiplier effect of five, which means $1 multiplied by 5. So somebody at Harvard wrote a paper saying, well, when is it going to happen? We have a $20 trillion economy, and it multiplied by 5, we should now have $100 trillion economy, but it's not. We actually have a recession. So so there is those kind of questions. The reason for happening things like that is the tax cuts, and this kind of stimulus include sort of skewed redistribution of income, which actually may cause more income inequality, which actually reduces demand, and then you have economy slows down instead of growth. So they do disagree. But here, on the other hand, most economists agree that the multiplier effect is there, and it was actually during even the Great Depression. John Keynes, who was a great economist, gave an idea and talk about multiplier theory. And it makes sense. If you have a dollar, if you spend, if you have a pension, a dollar you spend, I think somebody's going to maybe, suppose I buy a pizza, for example, and I spend a dollar, uh, and the pizza person might just buy dough or flour or something, and the rest of it is his profit, and then he may spend his profit. So it just keeps multiplying over time, and you could estimate what the multiplier effect should be. So that's I think the majority of economists are in this side, that there is a multiplier effect. They may disagree on the magnitude of this, and we, in our study, use pretty much what other similar studies have used. And there's a formula how to determine multiplier effect. So we are pretty comfortable. It was peer reviewed, and one of my reviewer, of course, Keith was one of the reviewer, but there were a couple of academics from various universities. So they sort of said this makes sense.
Wonderful. So we've got another couple of questions here that I think are kind of interrelated, so I'll sort of ask both of them and see if we can't get them in one go. One is, how does public pension impact compare to non-pension retiree economic impact? So I imagine we'd be talking about defined contribution approaches
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And then in addition, uh, I would assume we could imply a positive multiplier for corporate defined benefit plans too. Any thoughts on tax changes to encourage corporations to keep DB plans? So there's a little bit of that kind of DC and DB
Yeah, yeah.
comparative nature being asked about there. So wondering if you could speak to that.
Yes, sure. I think the uh, public pension DB plans certainly is, the no pension fund ever really didn't send the pension check in time. So, and I think the money is managed professionally, and so the impact is greater there. Whereas in the private, let's say, do it yourself, you have a DC plan, defined contribution plan in the private area on your own. First of all, you are managing your money. It doesn't grow, and I have done some analysis of this. Actually, it grows half as fast as the defined benefit plan. If you take a time horizon of, let's say, 20 years, all the DB plans, all the assets are combined. It's not individually assigned to each person, but overall, in aggregate, per person, DB plan asset growth is twice as fast as the individually managed defined contribution plan over the same period. So so any spending has a positive, whether it's coming from a defined contribution plan, it's coming from a defined benefit plan. So, but the impact is lower. And the one final point I want to make, there is a lot of evidence that the DC defined contribution plans actually have, uh, actually they sort of uh, increase income inequality. I mean, the well-to-do people will have a higher accumulation and higher ability to save as a percent of their payroll. So at the end of the day, there is a greater income inequality in the DC side compared to DB side. Uh, so that slows down the economy too. So not only on the private DC side, you have lower return. You have to manage all the risk is yours, and you may be actually promoting income inequality, which in turn reduces economic growth impact. So those are the major differences. And the question about the corporations, of course, corp corporations used to have a lot of them abandoned their DB plans, and there are very few people in the private sector who are covered by a defined benefit plan. How do we convince them? Of course, like on the public side, obviously, the role of public sector is to provide public services, not make it profit, whereas the corporation's goal is not, then some of them do provide public service, but most of them want to make profit. So the goals are very different. So it's hard to say, well, maybe we can convince uh, corporation to provide. Only angle I would think of is as the labor shortage becomes more prevalent, the DB plan may be an attraction to attract and retain new employees. Uh, so I'll stop
Great.
here. Maybe Keith has something to add.
Only observation I would make is that corporate pension plans, for the most part, have been closing down over the last 20 years. So they're diminishing in size, and also because
Yeah.
they're closed, their asset allocation is much more conservative. So they're generating far less in investment earnings. But on an equal playing field, I think that corporations ought to be able to generate the similar level of economic activity that public pension plans do.
Great. I have one more question here that I think might just be good as kind of a clarifying piece as we close out. We want to make sure to stay on time. Regarding the Connecticut example, you mentioned that there might be some temporarily net negative issues as states pay down essentially a historical deficit with respect to their pension contributions. So regarding the Connecticut example, is the conclusion that making higher than required contributions to pay down a deficit is a bad thing to do?
The question is it a bad thing to do?
Yes, that's the
I
question
mean,
is.
look, depend on who you ask. I mean, I'll say it's a good thing to do to pay down. Then you actually reduce your cost in the future. So pay it down now, and it's like your own mortgage. If you pay a little bit extra, you may end up paying it off sooner, and you have more money to do other things. And Connecticut did interesting tax reforms about a few years ago, and actually I was involved in some of those discussions with the Connecticut Education Association. Connecticut didn't have income tax, and the way to get your foot in was to start with the highest income people, or especially tax the bonuses, Wall Street bonuses, that a lot of people live in Connecticut and work on Wall Street. So that was a growing source of revenue, and they were able to, over the years now, especially, they have been getting, they have their rainy day fund is full. They can't put any more money in that, and this money from the bonuses, Wall Street bonuses, keep coming in. So I think that was a smart thing to do, not really tax everyday people, but just the top. Um,
Very good. All right. Well, I think that brings us just about to time. So I just want to take another moment to thank everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate having you all here. A recording of the webinar will be available after the webinar, and the PowerPoint deck as well will be available in the NCPERS Center for Online Learning. You can find the link there in the chat here. I want to give one more thank you to our amazing speakers, Michael and Keith. Really appreciate both of you for your time and insights today. And with that, we'll wish everybody a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you.